Dear cherished child, pay close attention if you have faith in God. Say Amen. There are times in life when things don't add up. Plans crumble, people shift, doors lock unexpectedly. You look around and question why this journey. Why the silence? Why now? And that's when God speaks. Not with answers, but with comfort. Trust me, even when you can't find me, especially then, this message didn't land in your hands by chance. It reached you because your spirit was finally still enough to hear what heaven has been trying to convey for a long time. Not with force, but with calm. Not with noise, but with faith. God doesn't ask you to comprehend everything. He asks you to stay receptive, especially now when things don't look like what you hoped for. You haven't failed. You haven't been shunned. You are not being penalized. You are being realigned. And what feels like a detour is actually a divine adjustment. You are being guided away from what would have exhausted you and gently towards what will finally satisfy you. Not immediately, but fully. Archangel Michael moves near to you now. Not dramatically, but with depth. His voice is stable, his presence serene. You're seeking clarity, he says, but clarity doesn't always arrive beforehand. Motion. Sometimes progress comes through motion. Relying on God's paths doesn't mean seeing the entire plan. It means taking the next step without fear. God communicates in a manner that feels like a gentle breath on your chest. You've been trying to control outcomes I've already handled, and I understand it's tough. I understand you felt let down, but dear one, I don't require your certainty. I need your surrender. Let me take what you've been holding too tightly. Let me guide where you've been doubting. Let me work in ways that logic can't foresee. The mysterious ways of God are not meant to puzzle you. They're meant to shield you. What you can't see now is the pain he's averting, the harm he's withholding, the miracles he's setting up in silence. And one day you'll look back and realize what you thought was a setback was really a breakthrough being constructed differently than expected. The spirit from beyond speaks now, not as a spectral figure of sorrow, but as a testament of wisdom. I didn't comprehend it either while I was here, they say. But now I perceive what you will one day perceive too. Nothing was squandered, not the tears, not the waiting, not the questioning. It all became part of the greater good. Michael, revised, nods with respect, stating, "This path isn't penalizing you. It's preparing you, and you are nearer than you believe, not to a finish line, but to a comprehensive realization." God concludes this section with words that resonate deeply in the soul, much like rain on parched ground. You might not grasp it now. You might not perceive how, but have faith in my mysterious workings. Because while you're waiting for a sign, I've already penned your arrival. You believed you were traversing alone through confusion, heartbreak, long nights filled with uncertainty. You thought no one observed your silent resilience. But God did, not just from afar, but closely. Type 222 to claim it. He didn't merely watch. He supported you throughout. You weren't deserted. You were cradled. That's the enigma we often overlook. We wonder, why was no one there? Unaware that God became the very breath that sustained us. He was in the friend who extended a hand before you shattered. He was in the melody that played when your soul couldn't utter a prayer. He was in your fortitude even when you labeled it survival. You see, the mysterious ways of God aren't always evident in grand miracles. Sometimes they're concealed as everyday moments that kept you going when everything else felt insignificant. Too much. That job you didn't land. That door that remained closed. That relationship that ended without explanation. It wasn't rejection. It was divine intervention. It just didn't feel like it yet. Archangel Michael steps forward again, not with armor this time, but with open hands. You've been fighting battles you were never meant to tackle alone, he says. And now it's time to realize not all of them were yours to conquer. Some were meant to be surrendered. Some were meant to be healed by heaven, not managed by you. God speaks softly. I never asked you to bear so much burden. I asked you to trust, and I know that trust has been challenged. But the fact that you're still reading these words, still breathing, still gentle, that tells me your spirit didn't shatter. It flexed. And that's how I know it's still evolving. You've been seeking guidance, questioning what's next. But the truth is you're already in progress. It's not approaching. It's unfolding. Quietly, subtly, softly, like petals opening before sunrise. You won't even recognize it all at once, but one day you'll look back and see your life blossomed in ways you never envisioned. The celestial soul returns now, voice soft like a whisper through old thoughts. I saw how tough the struggles were. I saw how hard you fought. But remember, my dear, even when it feels like the world is crumbling, your spirit is enduring. You've been trying to understand things, they hint. Not everything holy is logical. At times, the wisest action is trusting what you can't yet comprehend. Michael mentions, there is divine motion in silence. You may not sense the change, but heaven has already started arranging things. Keep going, even if it's gradually, especially then. And God speaks one last time in this section, not to order, but to console. I never required you to decipher everything. I only needed you to stay near because in strange ways, even your unanswered queries are becoming part of a very sacred solution. You've struggled so much to keep everything in place. Relationships, hopes, aspirations. You believed letting go would mean defeat, that surrendering meant abandoning. But heaven viewed it differently. Letting go wasn't the end. It was the beginning of divine synchronization. And now God whispers something sacred into your weary soul, the release you dreaded. It was me guiding you gently into something better. You weren't being cast aside. You were being steered, and not towards less, but towards peace. Peace that doesn't demand everything to be flawless. Type God is good if you love God. Peace that doesn't wait for answers. Peace that simply says even this is holy. You let go of someone or something. Perhaps not because you stopped caring, because you ultimately valued yourself enough to stop clinging to what no longer fit you correctly. And making such a choice doesn't shatter your spirit. It liberates it. God affirms you didn't falter. You listened, you perceived the transformation in your soul even when your heart wasn't fully aware. That's trust, that's faith, that's personal growth. You departed not with resentment but with respect, and that journey was sacred. Archangel Michael advances once more, this time bearing no sword, just clarity. Many are afraid of conclusions, he says, but you grasped something few ever realize. Some conclusions are actually improvements. Not because what you abandoned was poor, but because you surpassed it spiritually, emotionally, energetically. What departed from your life may still resonate in your recollections. That's acceptable. Growth doesn't imply forgetting. It means preferring progress over emotional bondage. It means blessing the past and still leaving. You didn't journey alone. Every time you advanced, pondering if you made the right decision, heaven was with you, murmuring, persevere. This path leads to your evolution. The spirit from beyond reappears, voice filled with insight. You let them go softly, they say. And in doing so, you also released a part of yourself that required healing, which you weren't even aware of. I observed, we respected it, and now I softly say, it's time to tread more lightly. God proceeds. With profound kindness, you frequently inquire if it was correct to let go. And I respond not with a loud rumble, but with transformation. Observe you. More serene, more mindful, that is your response. You didn't lose, you made space. And the life that is approaching will occupy the very spaces you once feared would always be empty. But now they are not void. They are sacred. Michael concludes this part with calm authority. You didn't shatter, you evolved. And the person you have become, that's who heaven has been waiting to rise. And God ends with peace infusing your very breath. You released. I held on. And now witness what I construct with your surrender. You thought nothing was happening. You thought life had stalled, the messages ceased, the energy waned, the clarity you desired never seemed to arrive. But what you didn't perceive, what heaven knew all along, was that this stillness wasn't emptiness. It was sacred ground. A room being cleaned for what was too heavy to carry before. A season where noise was hushed so your spirit could speak. This wasn't absence. It was alignment. This wasn't delay. It was divine planning. Type 1111 if you love God, Jesus. In the stillness where you believed yourself overlooked, you were truly being introduced to your own voice, your own gentleness, your own light. Not the version molded by others, but the one God initially envisioned, unaffected, unburdened, untouched by assumptions. God states, "You've confused stillness for punishment. Yet I've only been fostering deeper roots so that when what you've hoped for materializes, it doesn't uproot you. It grounds you. I wasn't disregarding you. I was readying the version of you robust enough to bear everything you once dreaded might elude you. And that version isn't ahead of you. It's here. Crafted not in clear-cut moments, but in prolonged periods of surrender. Not during acclamation, but in concealed hours of obedience. The very seasons you longed to evade became the framework for the healing that could only occur in quiet. Archangel Michael now approaches not as a warrior but as a spectator. You did not squander the waiting. He says, you stabilized, you unraveled falsehoods, you learned how to remain present even when nothing seemed secure. That wasn't stagnation, that was sacred stillness. And that stillness spawned resilience. You haven't merely clung on. You've been learning to breathe anew, fully, freely, without guilt, without apprehension, without pretense. Didn't require extra effort to be deserving. You needed time to recall. You were already so. The soul from the past now speaks with respect and tranquility. You sought signs, they murmur, but this peace growing within you is the true sign. It's not boisterous, it's not flashy, but it's yours and it's genuine. It's heaven saying you don't need to hunt anymore. What's destined for you isn't fleeing. They observed what you carried, how quietly you suffered, how profoundly you yearned, and now they grin. Not because your queries are answered, but because your heart is finally quiet enough to accept the answer that's always been waiting. You are secure. You are acknowledged. You are not lagging behind. Michael adds with serious dignity. Heaven doesn't hurry, it acts with purpose. And now it flows through you. You don't need to push the future. You merely need to stay receptive enough to let it approach. You're not being asked to pursue results. You're being encouraged to live in harmony with peace as your permit and gentleness as your power. This is the beauty of God's mysterious paths. Not to impress, but to transform. Not to make sense, but to provide meaning. God concludes with a whisper that soothes every hidden part of you. This is the essence of God's enigmatic ways. Peacefulness wasn't barren, it was comprehensive. Now that you sensed its sanctity, you'll never again mix quietness with my absence. You believed it was late, you thought you had missed it. The moment, the chance, the solution. It slipped by, didn't it? You calculated the days, revisited the paths, tried to grasp what seemed like divine timing, but eluded through your fingers like fog. And yet here you are still standing, still reading, still breathing in the midst of a moment you didn't anticipate. And this too, this precise breath is right on schedule. Heaven has never been early and never tardy. What looked like delay was actually mercy in action, providing your soul room to evolve into what it couldn't have become had the answer come earlier. Type 777 if you believe in God, Jesus. God communicates now softly but decisively. You are not behind, you are not neglected. I haven't altered your destiny. I've been meticulously nurturing it with love. You were not intended to rush through life. You were meant to move with me. And the reality is, you've been moving. Not always in noticeable ways, but deeply, presently, learning how to accommodate yourself, even when the external world demanded answers you hadn't found yet. Angel Michael comes into view, farther away a close guide but a nearby influence. There is no penalty in your stride, he explains, only purpose. Divine timing doesn't mean quick, it means loyal. And you've been loyal even when your faith seemed thin, even when you had more queries than guidance, even when you were weary of saying, perhaps next time. That endurance wasn't in vain, it prepared you. The spirit from afar whose energy has subtly accompanied your journey now speaks again with admiration. You don't perceive it yet, they say. But the things that took longest to reach will bring the deepest tranquility. You were not being examined. You were being stabilized. Stabilized not in fear, but in calm, in elegance, in the unwavering certainty that even when everything seemed quiet, you were still dancing in heaven's beat. God continues, you keep questioning if I altered my plan. But dear one, my pledges don't expire. I never asked you to make everything happen. I asked you to trust me when nothing was clear. You didn't fail that. You achieved it. Your timeline differs from the world's. Your narrative isn't driven by pressure. It is guided by providence. Every closed door, every delayed affirmation, every surprising denial, they weren't blunders. They were part of the performance that choreographed your life. Now guides you towards a sacred evolution. Michael speaks with tranquil assurance. What is destined for you has not passed. It is arriving as planned, not according to your plan, heavens. And you are not late. You are ready. This readiness wasn't earned. It was unveiled. Gradually, gently, with each surrender, with each prayer you didn't realize you were praying, with every time you let peace overpower panic. God concludes this part with a truth so steady it becomes your next move. You didn't miss it. You didn't mess it up. You are exactly where I need you to be, and what I've prepared for you is not fleeing. It's advancing to greet you right on time. There's a change occurring within you. Not loud, not sudden, just steady, just sacred. The fog is lifting. The questions are softening, and the peace you never thought you'd feel again is starting to settle into your bones. You don't have all the answers, but for the first time in a long while, you're okay with that. You're not pursuing certainty. You're standing in clarity, the kind that isn't explained but felt. This clarity doesn't come from knowing the end result. It comes from knowing the one leading the way. And now that your hands are open, your soul can breathe. Finally breathe. What once seemed pressing now feels contained. What once felt burdensome now feels backed up, because you're not alone. You were never alone. God's mysterious ways weren't intended to puzzle you. They were always meant to console you. God whispers softly now, almost like a friend sitting next to you in silence. I never needed you to understand it all, he says. I just needed you to make space for peace to arrive. And now it has not as an explosion, but as tranquility. You've stopped struggling with the process. You've started trusting the presence, and that is the most significant breakthrough of all. Archangel Michael enters this stillness with respect. You're no longer pushing light, you're walking in it. The change wasn't in your environment, it was in your viewpoint. You've stopped gauging progress by how far you've gone and started measuring it by how tenderly you glide through what once shattered you. The soul from beyond reappears again, not with sorrow, but with pride. You've evolved into someone I always knew you could be, they whisper. Someone who listens internally. Someone who no longer searches for answers in everything because now they hold the answer within. The very peace you yearned for wasn't concealed. It was within you all along, awaiting your readiness. Now that readiness has arrived. God asks, do you sense it? The tranquil assurance in your soul, that's me. That's me mending you, not into someone new, but into the person you've always been, buried beneath the noise, beneath the hurts. You no longer search for signs from the outside. You become the evidence others need. Your presence itself is tranquility, your voice now a prompt for calm, your life an unraveling of grace. Michael concludes this section with gentle lucidity. You're no longer looking back, you're advancing with fluidity. This fluidity isn't by chance, it's alignment. And God whispers one final truth into your heart, you can perceive more now. Because the mist wasn't in the world, it was in the burden you weren't meant to bear, and now it's vanished. Inhale. You've stepped into the sacred part of the journey. There was a time you were exploring, anxious for a sign, a resolution, some verification that what you were doing mattered. You looked outward, you questioned in silence. You yearned for a breakthrough, but something unexpected transpired. The answers didn't surge in from the outside. They surfaced within, gently, persistently, without ceremony. And now standing here in this sacred stillness, you understand the truth. You've transformed into the solution you were seeking. It didn't happen quickly. It happened through each moment you chose to have faith. When it was simpler to question, it happened when you relaxed rather than closing off. When you continued to love even when unsure it was safe. When you stood still and allowed change where you couldn't. That's what molded you, not success. Not perfection, but surrender. Now God speaks with strong assurance. I've observed you growing, not for praise, but for alignment. You didn't chase light, you held it. And now your life radiates not from understanding, but from devotion. You stayed near even in confusion, and that, my child, is what made you sacred. You are no longer shaped by fear. You are sculpted by grace. And the parts of you that once shattered easily now hold peace like a vase. Archangel Michael steps back not to shield you, but to acknowledge you. You've outgrown what once seemed daunting. He says, you no longer tread in fear, you walk with awareness. You walk alongside heaven, not ahead or behind with it. That's what spiritual maturity looks like. Not power, but peace, not act, but being. The soul from beyond now speaks one last time in this part, not from yearning, but from love. You are no longer who you were when this journey commenced, they murmur. You've become gentler, stronger, wiser, not by compulsion, but by faith. And I'm so proud of who you've become. Not because you did everything correctly, but because you allowed yourself to be authentic. Their words don't torment, they heal. Their memory doesn't cause sorrow anymore, it brings gratitude. God's voice now resonates in every chamber of your heart. You don't need to seek anymore. He says, the clarity you desired is in the quiet self-assurance you now possess. You've been refined, not erased. And the new you, the real you, is who I've been revealing all along. You are not ahead of your time. You are not lagging on your mission. You are right in the middle of divine unfolding and nothing is being squandered. Michael softly concludes this part with a grin. You used to wonder what's next. Now you ask what's true. That shift is sacred and it changes everything. And God finishes with one sentence that carries the weight of every answer you've ever sought. You are no longer evolving. You are. If you believe in God, type Amen or 444 or 555 or 11. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching this God message. May God Jesus will grant you abundance in every